Hello, my name is Géraldine Schwarz. I'm a French-German author and journalist living in Berlin. I'm a kind of explorer of the past, like an archaeologist who gathers debris to recompose an antique statue. I gather debris from the past to recompose stories. In Those Who Forget, my book, which will be published in September in the UK by Pushkin, I weave together 3 generations of my own French-German family story, and I put them in the context of Europe's post-war reckoning with fascism. What triggered the idea for the book was a discovery. One day I discovered that my German grandfather, Karl, took advantage of the Nazi anti-Semite policies to buy a business from a Jewish family to a low price in 1938. I also discovered letters from the only survivor of this Jewish family. The rest of the family perished in Auschwitz. And after the war, this survivor will ask reparations to my grandfather. I started to ask to myself, how guilty were my German grandparents under Nazi Germany? They were neither villains nor heroes. They were, like most of the Germans, following the current. But though their impact was tiny on an individual level, the everyday acts of cowardice and opportunism of this mass of people created the conditions necessary for the functioning of a criminal system. When we think of a criminal system like Nazism or slavery, we tend to focus on monsters or leaders, and we forget the mass who follows the current. And I wanted to question the responsibility of these people, like my grandparents, because in my opinion, it is the best way to learn from history. Why? Because I think their story sends us back to our present-day responsibilities instead of always pushing the fault on the others, on the leaders, on the monsters. It helps us realize that through indifference, opportunism or conformism, each of us can serve an unfair or criminal system. Another main character of my book is my father. After the war, he confronted my grandfather very heavily. While German society refused to pass the past, my father and many of his generation forced the German population to acknowledge their responsibility. And this was the start of a long process which allowed Germany to transform collective guilt into democratic responsibility. The reason I wanted to share this experience of Germany is that it could inspire those who have struggled to understand that in order to transform the weight of the past into wealth, one must confront history's shadows. In the last part of my book, I observe that countries who repress history are much more vulnerable to populism, extremism, anti-Semitism, racism. So the main message of Those Who Forget is keeping memory alive is not a moral accessory to look good. It helps us know ourselves better, to avoid mistakes, to identify dangers, those who come from others, but above all, those who come from us. And it guides us to understand where we come from and to shape the future together. After all, it helps us to live more consciously. Thank you. Tschüss.